folks, Rich from Trapping Inc. TV here. And I bet you're just like me and the day can't start until that first cup of coffee hits bottom. For me, it is Stout Maple, Old Smoke's coffee's darkest roast. Strong, aromatic, and smooth that gets me firing on all 8 cylinders and ready to face the day. Old Smokes roast their coffee over wood fires, the old-fashioned way. Wood roasting takes time, much longer than modern hot air roasting. Slow roasting over wood, though, takes the bitter out of the bean and imparts a heavenly taste and aroma from the wood used. Old Smokes makes a perfect roast for each person. There are 5 roasts from light to extra dark, each roasted over a different wood for a unique flavor. Right now, you can order from their online store and use our promo code TRAPPING30. That's TRAPPING, the number 30, to save $35 on shipping for orders over $99.99 Canadian. Just go to oldsmokescoffee.com. That's OLE smokescoffee.com. Use the promo code TRAPPING30. oldsmokescoffee.com. Use the promo code TRAPPING30 to save $35 on shipping for orders over $99.99 Canadian. And now, let's get to today's guest.
Hey, welcome to the podcast. I'm Rich Mellon, and today on the Scuttlebutt, we have a longtime friend and a very well-known outdoorsman from Montana, Randy Newberg. And Randy, it is awesome to be able to talk to you, especially right now during the crazy time of the virus. It's winter. I don't know if it's winter where you are, but man, it's still serious winter here, and it's the 5th of April. You know what I mean? Actually, no, it's not.
I really appreciate that you'd even call me, Rich, because you must really be bored or have you're at the bottom of your bucket for guests.
No. You're just so busy. Like this time of the year, usually you and I are like, dots on a map, streaking by one another as we're headed off to different events and everything. I just realized it's not the 5th of April, it's the 7th of April. It's like, I've even lost days, but and then I just got thinking, like, who's not doing anything right now? I thought, well, everybody who's in the industry's not doing nothing, so I thought I'd call you.
Yeah, I appreciate that because my wife is getting tired of having to talk to me. She even tells the dog the dog will come over to kind of hang out with me, and she'll whistle the dog over, like, don't go talk to him. He's driving me nuts, man. But no, winter is, I think it left here. We got 5 inches of snow on Sunday, and Monday morning it was, I don't know, like down to single digit Fahrenheit. But now it's supposed to get up into the 60s the next 4 or 5 days. So better be careful. We won't know what to do. We'll get sunburned and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, we can get frostbite and sunburn the same day.
Up in Alberta, are you guys in these shelter in place kind of rules like we are down here in the States?
Yeah. Well, but it's just like, it's like pouring. I tried to explain it to somebody, and I was explaining it to Sandy this morning. I said, it's like dumping the gunpowder out of a cartridge, and then you put a match to it. Well, that pile in the middle is going to light, but all those little grains that have rolled away from it, they're not going to light up. And that's what we are. We're one of those little grains. We're out from where the conflagration is going to happen. And I think we've had 2 cases. The city of Grand Prairie is where we live and work, and I think it's 70,000 people or something like that. But we've had 2 cases there. They both got better and left. And my son is a paramedic, critical care paramedic, for the city of Red Deer, which is, I think, the 3rd largest city in Alberta. Mm-hmm. And they have 1 in ICU. That's it. It's not as big a deal. Where it's hard is there's a retirement home, old folks home in Calgary, and they got it. And I think there's been 24 deaths in Alberta, and 12 of them came from that old folks home.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, there was the death of a bunch of muskrats because of shelter in place. Well, not really the death, I should say. Not as many muskrat deaths as there could have been, because I went and got my rat trap set out, and the next day we got the shelter in place rules.
Oh, so, really?
Yeah. So I only got like 1, maybe 2 checks, and the first day I was just out goofing off. You know how it is when you have to film something, you don't get anything done.
No,
it's a waste of time. So the first day I got like 12 traps set or something, and then the second day I got some more set, and then they tell everyone you got to go home and be in timeout for the next month or two. So I can't imagine how many muskrats are going to be on those creeks and ponds next year if I didn't thin them out this year.
Well, it's so cool that you're doing it in creeks, because it doesn't happen in creeks around here. Beaver dams it does, but mostly it's in the farmlands and the little ponds is where the vast majority of muskrats come from. But you brought up a subject that I just want to wander a little bit sideways on here, and that's about how filming gets in the way of everything. And people don't understand. They say, well, you just film that and you should put that up. You should have put a YouTube up on that. And we're just a tiny little company. It's a one-man band. So, I mean, I'm editing right now, and I'm working on, I think, episode 10 of season 6. And I needed a 1-minute piece yesterday. So by the time I go set everything up, get the audio done and the cameras and, 2 shots, all that kind of stuff, to film that 1 minute took me an hour and a half. You can imagine if you were trying to do something like trap while you're doing that. You know what I mean? It's like, wow.
Yeah. And so I wasn't allowed to bring a camera guy with because of all these shelter in place rules. So I'm out there filming myself. And you know how it is. You go put the tripod up and then you run over there. And then you're thinking, well, the wind's blowing. I wonder if the audio is worth a damn. And then you go over there and you listen to the audio in the headset. Oh, no, better turn the mic the other direction so the wind isn't bad. Well, you turn the camera that direction, and then the sun, the shadows and everything. It's like, no wonder these muskrats are so thick in here. I try to film this. I don't ever get a chance to thump any of them on the head.
I know you're preaching to the choir, because I mean, where we live and where we trap, I have, hired cameramen and that, but they just refuse to come lots of times. It's like, are you kidding me? Do you know what the temperature is? Well, when you when you start this stuff, you're committed. We have like trap check laws for like things like foot holding and that out in the big line. It's every 48 hours. But even on we have no check times on our killing stuff. So our snares, our body grips that we have no check times on, but I can't leave it out there because something will eat it, and if I'm going to kill it, I deserve to utilize it. I deserve to not allow it to go to waste. So, I mean, come hell or high water, you're out there every 4 days, Yeah.
No, I understand that. For me, I love chasing these muskrats, and I got too late of a start on it this year. You brought up the Spring Creek stuff, and here where I live in Montana, just north of Yellowstone, we have a lot of seismic activity, geothermal activity, and so a lot of our creeks don't freeze. They're spring creeks, so they come out of the ground. Everything else, the rivers, the ponds, the lakes and reservoirs, they've got 2 feet of ice on them. Well, a lot of the muskrats, when they start seeing the ice come on, they head to these spring creeks. They've learned that the spring creeks don't freeze. And the density of muskrats in these spring creeks is embarrassing. And they're destroying these creeks. So I go out to these landowners and say, hey, you mind if I thin out the rodents that are ruining all your banks here on your spring creek? Oh, go ahead. And you'll catch 200-300 of them in a week in a 3-mile stretch of creek. That's how thick the densities are.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And now this time of year, we had a thaw that came in early March. And so the rivers cleared off the ice, and instantly the muskrats head back to the bigger rivers once the ice goes. So it's not like a migration you think of as animals walking across the landscape, like elk migrating out of Yellowstone or, caribou going across the tundra. It's muskrats migrating anywhere from 3 to 5 mile distances through the creeks, just heading on downstream. So
that is so cool. But I mean, it goes right back to what, we get a million questions. And I mean, we'll talk about what you do regularly for your TV and that, but we get so many questions about, where do I trap? Where should I do this on my trap line and all that? And I always say, and I try not to be a cop out, but you have to know your trap line. There is an incredible piece of information. You know, knowing your trap line and knowing that how important those spring creeks are, and that the muskrats will actually move there in order to stay, you know, above the ice for the winter,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. And those spring creeks, the banks are just the water temperature and the ambient. Probably, I've never done an official study of it, or research of it, but I would bet the air temperature in that first 1 foot of elevation off the water surface is high enough that that's why those banks don't freeze near the water line. And so what they do is those little beady eyes get there digging on the banks, and they dig these pockets and they cut these shelves in underneath the banks. And then they sit under there and they eat the roots from the bottom up. And then they just stand there and you can watch them, and they got their little hands up above their head, digging more dirt away. And then all of a sudden they stop and then they start eating more roots. Well, you get 100 muskrats in a half-mile stretch of creek doing that, things go to hell in a hurry. So I get to duck hunt out there every once in a while. And in November, before everything freezes over, you see a few muskrats. And then you go there the last week of December when everything's froze up. And for the first few times, I'm thinking to myself, where in the hell did all these muskrats come from? Well, I was talking to some people who study that sort of stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, here in these valleys, these intermountain valleys, they like to get away from the ice because there's fresh grub to be had in those roots that they can get to right there at the water level on the bank. So
that is fascinating. That is absolutely. So how do you trap them?
I don't know if you've seen my videos, Rich. We use those little fiberglass fence posts.
Yes.
And we push them into the mud, and we got a little trap platform there, and we use 1.5 coils and a carrot. Carrot's about 5 inches above the water level, and here comes that dude swimming through there, and he's thinking, you know what? That's a pretty darn good looking root right there, that orange thing. And if you hit it right, and like usually I try to get out there in February. One, the hides are perfect.
Oh,
they're not fighting with each other, so they're not all bit up, and they're in there thick as thieves. So you go do a trap check and you put 50 traps in there and you catch 45 muskrats. It's like, whoa, I got to get to the skinning shop here. But,
is there a lot of current there?
No, there's not. That's one of the good parts is the headwaters of where these creeks come out usually has a lot of, it's like a mountain stream up higher, but a lot of them that come out in our valleys and in the more flat prairie country, they're moving really, really slow. There's enough current, obviously, to make it a creek, and the creeks are about 50 feet wide in their widest spots. Sometimes they come down to, maybe 20 feet, 25 feet. And they just meander through the prairie out there. And then eventually they either dump into the river or they start losing their water temperature. And as they get further away from their source, they do start icing up then. Okay. And the rats they like the places that aren't iced up. And,
it's true. I mean, we have power plants that have, they produce enough warm water discharge all winter long that ducks and geese never leave. That same situation.
Yeah. And then that is another thing, when you're water trapping, is these open areas when the mallards, when you guys kick them out of Alberta and send them down here to Montana, it's like hornets' nests in these spring creeks of mallards. Well, you have to put your trap a little bit deeper than you expected. Otherwise, you end up with the toe of a fingernail from a duck in there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they come, how it is. They come swimming over the top of it and snap it, and then they get their little fingernail in there. So you quickly realize, okay, instead of putting it an inch below the water, I'm going to put it 2 inches below the water. And then the ducks swim right over the top of it. And it annoys you because the duck comes and springs your trap. and then here comes a muskrat, eats your carrot.
Yeah. You know, I have a pond in my backyard, and it actually was dug in order to get the dirt to backfill around the basement of my house. Okay. And I have muskrats in it all the time. And I have done lots and lots of, I've set the poles up with the traps on them and all that kind of stuff. And I've done ran a lot of video footage there, you know, trying to get one being actually caught, right? Yeah. Do you know how often a muskrat has to go up on one of those traps, and how often they stand on the jaw on the outside and reach up for that carrot before they actually get caught?
Really?
Like
no.
Hours of footage.
Really?
So that tells me how many you have there, and that you probably have multiple rats at the same time going for that carrot.
Oh yeah. I've watched that before. I've set them and thought, I'm just going to see what happens. Here comes one swimming up there. He gets in the trap. He bails off the platform, and he's down there running out of air. And here comes 3 or 4 of his buddies standing on that little wire, eating that carrot. I've watched them get in the trap and sit there and eat the carrot before they decide to climb off the platform while they're in the trap. It's like, how are you doing this, Mac? Well, so, I don't know. He probably said, well, if I'm going down with a full belly here. But
well, I've got we have a muskrat show. Episode number 2 is airing right now this week on Wild TV here in Canada, and in it, I actually catch 2 muskrats in the same 1.5 foothold.
No way.
Yeah.
Really? Wow. I have never done that.
Well, that's a first.
Yeah.
That was a first. And we've whacked a lot of muskrats.
Well, they're probably worth something up in your part of the world. Down here, since the price went to hell in 2014 or whatever, you almost got to give them away. But oh well.
You can probably average $4 or $5 right now, but we just because of this virus and everything, it's been terrible. We had an auction that was supposed to happen, and then they went to an online because nobody could get to it, and I don't know what ended up happening, but we're all sitting around kind of waiting, and everybody's putting fur away into freezers, I guess. Some things you can't control, right?
Right. No, I got a whole freezer full of beaver. I got to figure out when I'm going to decide that I want to go flesh and stretch those things. But normally this is when I'd be out hammering the beaver, starting the last week of March, first week of April. I don't know. You sent me a picture of how much snow and ice you guys have there. I don't know. I'm lazy, Rich. I don't like trapping beaver through the ice. I'll just admit, I don't like doing it because it's too much work.
It's a lot of work, but I actually gave up doing them through the ice probably the end of February. But yeah, at the time I was pulling my lynx snares, and well, I would have been middle of February, I guess, was when I pulled the lynx snare. So it'd been about the end of February was the last time I went down south on my line, and it was just because it once it started snowing, it was 4 to 6 inches of snow every 2-3 days, 4 to 6 inches, and now. If I jump off of the machine and step off the track, I'm halfway between my belly button and my chest. You know what I mean? And before that, January and early part of February, it wasn't too bad digging out around. There was maybe a foot of snow around a beaver house or whatever. But then with all of this snow we got, we started getting wind, and up here the wind is out of the west, the northwest, the northeast, that kind of thing, the north, and always the first place you go on a beaver house when you're going through the ice is always the south exposure, because that's the last place that freezes in the fall, and it's the first place that thaws in the spring, right?
Yep.
Well, guess when the wind's blowing out of the northwest where the biggest drift is.
Yeah, on the lee side, down there on the south side.
I know. So I give up, and I want to get it back out here, but I'm scared that it's going to be one of those 6-day springs now. We're in the first week of April, and we've got so much snow. I actually plowed snow again yesterday. And,
really?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And when it turns around, it's going to be a disaster, I think. But what's new in 2020, the year that was written by Stephen King and directed by the What's the guy the guy that does all the crazy movies, Kill Bill and all that? What was his name?
Oh, shit! I can't. I spaced it out.
Yeah, I did
Anyhow,
too. I spaced it out halfway through saying it. Quarantine's hard on everybody.
That's for sure. Did I tell you I got checked for coronavirus last week?
Did you?
Yeah, I was sick. I had a sore throat, and I've had my crew. You're gonna crack up when you hear this. I've got 8 production people. In addition to being a tax accountant a little bit, I'm a really shitty accountant anymore. Not that I was ever good to start with.
Yeah, you weren't any good when you worked for me.
I know. Yeah. The old Toby Keith song about I ain't as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was. Exactly. I can't even. I wasn't even good once. So I sent everybody home 3 weeks ago, and we've been working from home. About 2 weeks ago, I start getting this sore throat. I'm like, not good. Well, my doctor is a hunting buddy, so I text him, hey, how you hanging in there, da-da-da, and he texts me back, oh, I'm good. And he's like, how you doing? I'm like, well, I got this sore throat, but I'll be fine. And I have this weird liver condition that really causes me a lot of fits. And he instantly says, tomorrow morning, I'm going to see you down at the viral triage because I'm working there and you better be there. So I wheel in there. They swabbed me and it came back negative though. So
good.
I'm thankful for that. Yeah. So
crazy time, isn't it?
So it's really, really crazy. And I don't want to make light of, the seriousness of it, but I like to go do things that get my mind off stuff. That's why I'm just about to the point where all those beaver I have in my freezer, I'm about ready to thaw them and start fleshing. I used to have a guy I could pay $3 to flesh a beaver for me. That's about $3 you can spend.
Well, you know what? It's funny because Sandy has a couple times she changed jobs. She'd been vice president for the Royal Bank for 23 years, and then she changed jobs. Now she's got into wealth management for a different company. They actually had a couple of days there, a better part of a week, where they sheltered in place, and then it was determined that they were essential, and where they are, their offices, they're not exposed to anybody, and everything's being done over the phone and Skype and all that kind of stuff anyway, right? But she discovered that she can't handle being at home. Like, she's very much a very gregarious person. That's part of her. You know how so many people just hate picking up the phone to make a cold call, that kind of stuff? She lives for that stuff, Yeah. And so then after this week, she comes home and, she's all perky and all that. And, so by Tuesday, Wednesday of the being back to a regular routine, she says, maybe we should go for a drive tonight. I says, what are you talking about? She says, well, I'm concerned about you being here at home, editing all the time in the office, and you're not getting out, you're not seeing anybody. I looked at her and I started laughing. I says, this is my life, man. This is me for forever. I said, even when I was running, when we were doing construction and that, 98% of the time it was just me on the building on the home by myself. She says, yeah, but I'm not sure that that's good for you.
Hey folks, Rich from Trapping Inc. TV here. And I bet you're just like me and the day can't start until that first cup of coffee hits bottom. For me, it is Stout Maple, Old Smoke's Coffee's darkest roast. Strong, aromatic, and smooth that gets me firing on all 8 cylinders and ready to face the day. Old Smokes roast their coffee over wood fires, the old-fashioned way. Wood roasting takes time, much longer than modern hot air roasting. Slow roasting over wood, though, takes the bitter out of the bean and imparts a heavenly taste and aroma from the wood used. Old Smokes makes a perfect roast for each person. There are 5 roasts from light to extra dark, each roasted over a different wood for a unique flavor. Right now you can order from their online store and use our promo code TRAPPING30. That's TRAPPING, the number 30, to save $35 on shipping for orders over $99.99 Canadian. Just go to oldsmokescoffee.com. That's OLE smokescoffee.com. use the promo code TRAPPING30. OldSmokesCoffee.com. Use the promo code TRAPPING30 to save $35 on shipping for orders over $99.99 Canadian. And now, let's get to today's guest.
Yeah. Well, as you told me that, what my mind started thinking is, man, this Rich, he's got it figured out. First, he has someone who can get him loans to get this trapping operation going. And now he made so damn much money, she had to go into the wealth management side of it.
Well, two things here. One, as Sandy always said, that she works at the bank. She doesn't shop there. And the second thing was I fired my accountant in the States. So I had money left over.
After you got rid of that accountant down in the States, everything went really good after that.
How many years ago did we meet, Randy?
Oh, I'm trying to think. Rich, it was when you guys had just started Outdoor Quest,
Yep.
You and TJ, and you were fishing the Walleye tour some, and our buddy Jim Muzanowski had introduced us. I would say that was like 2005 or 6.
No, you're wrong. You're wrong. It's 99.
No way.
99 was the 2000 was the last year I fished, but it would have been 99 that we first got in contact.
No, oh my gosh. Maybe I do have coronavirus. Holy cow, Moby Dick was a minnow back then.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that crazy?
My wife blames you and TJ for this.
Oh.
So,
you know what? Tell her to get in line. Lots of wives blame me.
No, it was kind of funny. My wife, I don't know if you remember, you guys came through town. We went and had dinner and a couple beers. And when we left, my wife says, those guys have more fun than anybody I know. I'm like, well, there's a couple things to that. First of all, they get to hunt and fish a lot. Second of all, they're Canadians. And I've never met a Canadian yet who had a bad day. So,
yeah.
And,
do you know what? I mean, this is a true story. There have been several times that TJ and I have been sitting in a bar, and I don't even drink, but we've been sitting in a bar and we'll get cut off because we're laughing so much. They figure that we're drunk off our butts and it shouldn't be being served anymore. But yeah, we do enjoy life for a fact. But
so when I told her in 2005, I said, I'm going to go buy some cameras. These guys make this look like too much fun. And my son, being a camera junkie and a computer junkie and everything else, he thought, boy, that's great. Let's go film each other. And so we filmed each other 2005, 6, and 7. And then ended up on Outdoor Channel in 2008. And the rest is history. So I'm going to blame it on you, Rich.
So we inspired you to start your own TV show. Yeah, right.
But I was smart enough, having been an accountant for someone who does outdoor TV, I knew how much money they made, which was just about zero.
Exactly. Less than zero. It seems I had to pay a bill that a Canadian wasn't supposed to pay, and and I never got reimbursed.
Have you ever had someone come to you and say, boy, it must be nice to make a bunch of money hunting, fishing, and trapping?
Oh,
How
yeah.
many times
Oh, yeah.
And if my wife is there when they say that, she always says, well, let me tell you something. This is the best job that he ever bought.
Yeah.
He makes monthly payments on it.
Well, I remember when we formed a company, a U.S. company, and you were our accountant, and this is how it all got started. And you recommended, well, then we need to have a bank account. So I think our bank account was with Wells Fargo in your hometown, and one time I crossed the border going down to the States, and I forget what I was doing. I mean, we were crossing all the time. And my passbook for the Wells Fargo account was sitting on the dash of my truck. I nearly got thrown in jail over that. The border guard didn't think it was legal for a Canadian to have a U.S. bank account. You very nearly got a call in the middle of the night to explain why they shouldn't be throwing my butt in jail.
Well, that would have been a wasted call. I would have said, I don't know those assholes, and hung up.
Oh, you caught him good. Throw him in jail.
No, I would have came and posted your bail money. You know that, Rich.
Yeah,
But, no, it's kind of weird how, through our buddy Jim, we got to meet and kind of have somewhat parallel paths, I guess, doing this foolishness. But
you were smarter than us, though. We were just enjoying traveling and everything else, but you decided to carve your own niche out with on your own adventures. How did you come up with that idea?
This is the accountant in me, right? Okay. So being in the States, we call them certified public accountants, CPAs. Up there in Canada, you guys call them chartered accountants.
Yep.
So I decide I'm going to build a business plan around this, and it's sitting here on my floor still. It's over there in a folder about 8 inches thick. And I concluded that in the States, anyhow, 70% of the people who hunt in the West hunt on public land, and over 90% of those people go without a guide. So I looked at all the TV shows at the time and said, well, nobody's doing public land and no one's doing self-guided. Sounds like a place for me. So
Fascinating.
I knew I had an ugly face. I didn't have a good body, and I better do something that just by default I don't have any competition. So that's how I ended up with On Your Own Adventures, all public land and all self-guided stuff.
But that's fascinating, because what we were doing was filming our dreams as we were going along and getting, hunting. We're lucky where we live. I mean, we can hunt bighorn sheep in our backyard and that kind of stuff, and moose and elk and antelope and all that. That's a regular thing. So we were extremely lucky for that. But it was a lot of people's dream, and to a certain extent, our trapping show is people's dream, because we trap animals that you never see in the South, and they dream about this, living this life off the grid, but none of them show up when it's cold. So we were filming and selling the dream, but you were filming and selling reality long before reality was popular.
Well, we tried to think that, and you'll get a kick out of this. So the first year I was on the Outdoor Channel, and you know how it is when people, how do I say this? The network kind of tells you what to do, right?
Yeah.
So it can only be this long. It's got to have commercial breaks here and there. And at the time, the network did not believe in episodes where you didn't kill anything. Well, I knew that was going to be a challenge for me, because I'm not the best hunter in the world, and there are going to be a lot of days where I don't kill anything. So we send this Nevada archery mule deer hunt in to the network, and their QC group, they look at it for, you submit it with this and the music license, blah, blah, blah. And they email me and say, we noticed that you didn't kill anything in this episode. We'd suggest you find a different episode. I'm like, this could be problematic. So I email them back. I'm like, no, I want to air that. And we go back and forth, and they're like, no, you should find something else. People don't watch a lot of stuff where you don't kill anything. And finally, the programming director gets involved, and he sends me this, after we argue, he sends me this email, kind of like the cover your ass letter of, well, you can do it. I guess your contract says you can, but we strongly suggest against it, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So we air it, and I'm thinking to myself, man, if they're not going to let me air episodes that are the real thing, right? The reality part of we didn't kill anything.
Yeah.
I'm only going to make about 3 or 4 successful episodes a year, and they're going to throw me off the network, even though I'm paying them money.
Yep.
So it aired, and it was one of our best episodes of the season as far as views. So it kind of did show me that people were looking for something that was relatable to how their day goes. Flat tire on the truck, got stuck, lost 2 days of hunting because the road washed out, or, whatever happens out there. And so we decided right then and there that our audience wants us to just show what happens regardless of the outcome. And so That's what we started doing in 2008.
You know what? And that was the neat thing about it all. We've came at it from a different direction and a different discipline, but I mean, just showing the truth and the reality was people are fascinated with it. I mean, we got the same feedback was that you can never do trapping on TV, and nobody's going to watch that. I mean, you're going to watch the same thing over and over again. You have no idea how many people will email us and say, you should just have a show where you just walk up to the different traps and in 30 seconds and you move on to the next one. The collectors out there that want to see how much you catch, because I mean, you have all kinds of footage that never makes it to TV because, you just don't have time. But, you also want to have some followable or reasonable thread for the episode, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So I know what you're saying. What I always found was so fascinating, though, because we had one of those same situations where we went. TJ drew a tag in the Ponsagon in Utah, and same deal. We went there, and he never did find anything he wanted to put a tag on. And so when we went to put it to air, we got the same feedback, right? And I said to them, I said, "You have in my contract that I can't show a sleeping deer being shot, but you're trying to tell me I can't show where we didn't shoot anything?"
Yeah. Obviously, those people, some of those network folks, and I don't know how it is on Wild TV, but the networks down here in the States, some of those people don't hunt. It just causes you to shake your head. And then the audience is always saying, well, why does it always look like this? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And I always want to say, if I sent you this 30-page network production guideline book, you'd understand.
Oh yeah, my goodness, yes. Well, and it's so funny too because here in the North we're pretty relaxed, and I mean when you watch regular cable TV anymore, there is nothing you can't see or hear on TV. There's no sacred cows anymore. There's not, language or visuals or, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, there's everything.
Yep.
I got QC'd on I think it was the second show that I sent to the Pursuit channel down the States. We aired their third and fourth quarter last year. And I sent it down there, and in it, we've had this long going thing where bears tear down our trap boxes and that, and my answer to it all the time is, what we say, bears are dicks, right? They QC'd me on the word dick.
No way.
Yep. And they bleeped the word dick, and they took it out of the closed captioning as well.
Wow. Wow.
Okay, I won't make that mistake again. That's their rules, and there's nothing wrong with clean language and all that. I just never thought of that being a bad word.
No. Well, part of these constraints and confines of network agreements and their production guidelines of telling you what you can do, what you can't do, how you have to do it,
right,
is why I ended up going to YouTube and to Amazon Prime. And I got tired of not being able to tell the story the way I wanted to. And I said, all right. I talked to my sponsors, and they said, you know what, Randy, we've been waiting for some person who's been successful in the TV space to make the jump to digital. And 3 of my biggest sponsors signed longer term deals and doubled down on the amount of money to make sure that when we did this transition, that we didn't have to worry about, are we going to run out of money?
So you took the big jump, and you run now just on YouTube and Amazon Prime.
Yep. And unfortunately for your Canadian listeners, Amazon Prime Video does not distribute in Canada.
I know.
It distributes in the US, it distributes in England, Germany, and Japan.
I know.
And this morning I had a couple emails from guys from Canada. I can't find you on Amazon. It's like, dang it.
I know. We also air on Amazon Prime in the US. Trapping Inc. does, and we're very, very popular. And the numbers are crazy. It's just crazy the number of minutes that a person turns there. But we can't even get it in Canada. You know, like, I mean, it's odd.
Yeah. So what I do is once they've been on Amazon for a week or two, then we put them up on our YouTube channel so that then we have a place that others can see them if they live in a country. We have a ton of people from Scandinavia, Canada, and Australia and New Zealand who follow our stuff. So they aren't getting the Amazon Prime episodes. So we throw them up on our YouTube channel along with all of our how-to content and other tips and information and stuff. So
one of the things that has to be liberating about that is the time constraints. You're no longer cutting to 28, 30, you know, and including 6 minutes of commercials. And
it is probably the most liberating part of all of it, Rick.
Yeah.
That like the mountain caribou hunt and Canada moose hunt I did up in British Columbia last year, that's 40 some minutes, I think.
Right.
And I still feel like we could have made it longer. There's just such cool country and such cool story to it. On TV, I would have had to either make that 2 episodes, which is really disjointing the whole flow of everything.
Yeah.
Or I would have had to cut out even more and made it the 22 minutes that the network allowed. So yeah, it's nice to be able to just tell the editor, you know what, guys, let's make this story look like this and do your best. And I don't care how long it is. I mean, we've done some on Amazon Prime that the network wouldn't have taken because they're only 18, 19 minutes, 20 minutes. But if that's all the story deserves, I don't want to hold the audience there while I'm, you know, got my thumb in my ear and stopping at the grocery store, you know some of the things
that filler, that filler. And I mean, there are some shows out there that are so beautifully produced, and I won't mention their names, but you know the ones I'm talking about, and they have great music, and they, you know, people standing around a fire in the dark, and the wind's blowing and sparks are flying, and it's got nothing to do with hunting whatsoever, but they're just filling time, right? And and for me, one of the things that we do in Canada here is we get a CanCom number, which is a Canadian content number, which the channels here have to have a certain percentage of their time has to be Canadian production, right? So to get this CanCom number, you have to send in what your opening and closing credits and all that are, and I don't have any. And they say, what do you mean you don't have opening and closing credits? How does anybody know who's there? Well, they can watch the show, but why don't you have opening and closing credits? Because I would lose a minute, 30 seconds on each end for that. And I don't have the time to lose. I'm trying to show, I'm trying to tell a story here, right? You cannot believe how hard that is to make a government employee. Of course, you'd understand that, but how hard it is to try and make them understand why I don't want to waste the time,
Right. Huh. That's weird because the other thing, this is probably the biggest reason why I left the network is at the end of each episode, we do a time lapse of us. I call it the gutting and gilling. The animal's down. It's time to start carving on it and put it into game bags and haul it out of there. So I want people to be connected to the idea that we do this for meat and then we don't leave the meat out in the field. So that's my way of doing it without the gory details. Well, the network would kick that back. And I'm like, you people wonder why there's the impression that we don't utilize the meat is because you won't let us show this.
Yep.
And finally, they relented a little bit. And I'll tell you who broke the ice on that is my buddy Steve Ranella, who does the Meat Eater.
Right.
The network, Sportsman's Channel, I believe I don't know how it worked, but they were somehow in partnership. So when Steve started doing some of that in his show, I was able to tell the network, hey, you're letting Steve do it, man. So they let me do a little bit of it. But for me, that was kind of the end of the road for me. It's like, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I want people to know how I do it, where I come, where I come from and all this. Why it's important to me to do it this way and tell the story that way and why I'm kind of the weird duck I am. And if the network isn't going to let me do it, I'm going somewhere else. So I would say the inability to show the gutting and gilling was the last straw for me.
But the whole part about it, you mentioned Steve, and when you were talking earlier about them not wanting you to show an episode where you didn't kill anything, he was one of the, I guess, the most visible that started making that happen, where he just decided he didn't want to shoot anything, and there was a lot of people lauded him for it, and he became very popular, right? And it's interesting what it is that people are actually looking for. I mean, we'll never ever have the perfect recipe for everybody, because there are people in different stages of their hunting career out there, right from when you first get started and you're a collector and you want to kill one of everything, and right through to people who are just as comfortable to be standing there watching somebody else do it or helping somebody else do it, right? Nearing the end of their career. But one of the things that I have always kicked against was people talking about harvesting animals. And I kill, and through my career, I've killed more than the Black Plague. And, and I ain't kidding, but there's no gussying that up. There's no hiding that. I kill for reasons, and the food is a big deal,
Yep. No, I'm completely unapologetic about it. I tell people, you know what, I killed this and I'm going to eat it. I mean, we've done 2 episodes on eating muskrats, and people look at us like, I'm not sure about these guys. And I don't know. I grew up, we ate muskrats and beaver, and I mean, a lot of the stuff that we trap, we ate also.
Yep.
But I don't know. If there is one good part about the digital space, you kind of get to identify or allow your own identity to be there, and you're not being packaged by somebody else. Where Trapping Inc. is a very unique content piece. If you go to networks, they try to put a wrapper on it so that Rich looks and sounds on the surface almost like everybody else, the end product. Right. Whereas you got a unique approach, a cool story to tell. You're doing things that everybody thinks back to. Man, that guy, he's the modern day Jeremiah Johnson, man. I'd love to go do that.
With less hair.
if you think about how a network would take you and try to bundle that according to their sideboards, a lot of who you are and the story you're trying to tell gets washed away because of that. And so it's been an interesting ride. And as you were talking about how big Amazon is, when they say they have 80 million U.S. households, they're not kidding.
Right.
I look at my Amazon analytics every morning when I get up for coffee, and I just shake my head. Amazon is 3 to 4 times bigger than my best year ever on TV.
Wow.
And YouTube is even bigger than Amazon. So,
well, you definitely have a runaway monster on your hands. Like, I mean, how many different digital products do you produce now?
We do Fresh Tracks. So the On Your Own Adventures show, the network and some other people talked me into renaming it after years 4. So year 5 and forward is called Fresh Tracks with Randy Newberg. Everyone said I needed my name in the title. Yeah. I resisted it. And then finally it's like, all right, you guys are the experts. Well, I still think they were wrong, but I'm not changing back. So on Amazon,
better to look stupid than indecisive, right?
There you go. Yeah. Like Theodore Roosevelt would say, the best thing to do is the right thing. The second best thing is to do the wrong thing, and the worst thing to do is nothing. So I guess I'm doing the second best thing, the wrong thing. But yeah, we have on Amazon Prime, it's called Fresh Tracks with Randy Newberg. And then our YouTube channel is Randy Newberg Hunter. And then I have a podcast, Hunt Talk Radio. Randy Newberg Unfiltered is the subtitle, because every once in a while I fly off the handle and get out in the weeds there. And then I do another podcast with a guy named Corey Jacobson, world champion, I think 10-time champion elk caller. We do one called Elk Talk Radio. And then I have a very large online forum called hunttalk.com. So between all those, they keep me hopping. So.
Which would you say was the best thing for building a brand, building, like there's lots of people listening here and they're looking up to you and saying, man, I'd like to do what he does. What would you say was the best?
Boy, that's a good question, Rich. Do we have 2 minutes for a little background of how I decided to go to the digital space? What kind of pushed me there?
What, you got something else to do while the virus is around?
There you go. Yeah. Okay. Well, if you're getting charged by the minute, I don't want you to send me a bill or something. I said, you send the bill the other direction. But so my son, you met him when he was about 15 or 14.
Yep.
He gets his undergrad in electrical computer engineering, works for General Electric for 3 years. 2015, he says, I'm going to go get an MBA. Engineers are weird people, man. I don't want to work with engineers. And I looked at him, I'm like, dude, I'm an accountant, man. We wrote the book on weird people. So he goes and gets his MBA and does a lot of digital marketing through that program. And he's the one who kind of wrote the path of how you build a digital brand. That was kind of one of his projects while he is in Chapel Hill getting his MBA. And so that's the playbook we've been following. And if I had to say what part of that was most critical to building a brand, well, that's a hard one. I'd say probably YouTube, the YouTube component, just because YouTube has some unique features that are present in everything we do. Everything we do has to be searchable, it has to be shareable, and it has to be free. And
right.
Some would say, well, Amazon Prime's not free. Well, most people aren't buying Amazon Prime to watch Randy Newberg on Amazon Prime. They buy Amazon Prime to get overnight delivery and free shipping and blah, blah, blah. So I kind of look at it as that part is free. So the other thing that we learned in this process was we thought that we were going to send everybody from our Hunt Talk forum, everybody from our social media pages of Facebook and Instagram and everywhere. We thought we're going to funnel them all to YouTube. Doesn't work that way. We spent a couple of years banging our head on the wall, and what we've found is that people have their preferences and their habits. So if someone likes to watch on Facebook or on Amazon, you better have content where they're comfortable and where they like to be. Because if you don't put your content where they want to be, they're going to watch something else or listen to something else.
That's
so we've changed our method of looking at it now, where every trip we go on, every campaign, if you want to call it that we work towards a story, a message, we need to end up with deliverables that can be aired on Amazon, aired on YouTube, talked about on our Hunt Talk forum, talked about on our podcasts, so that we are touching people no matter where that audience exists. My podcast audience, a lot of them don't even care for YouTube or video at all. They just like to listen to long form conversation. They don't want to watch anything. So
isn't it funny how I mean,
yeah.
For me with the podcast, it's when I'm driving. Yeah. I download a whole bunch of stuff before I leave, and I put my headphones on, and because I have a very basic truck, I put my headphones on and away I go. I mean, it's like off in my own world, right? I'm fascinated by the growth in podcasts but the number of podcasts out there, like making yourself stand out is something, isn't it? Like, I mean, you have been so successful.
Yeah, that's really, to me, the hard part. And that's why when you talked to me about a podcast, you were on my list of people that I said, someday I'm going to produce podcasts for people who might not be interested in it. And you were on that list. It's like, if there's any crazy SOB I know who can make people laugh and smile and get their mind off the troubles of the world, it is Richard Mellon. And fortunately, you jumped in and started doing your own. So there's a lot of things I think that make up a good podcast. I think you got to be true to who you are. You and I listen to enough podcasts that we hear the kind of packaged podcasts of 10 ways to kill a bigger buck this fall, or it's almost a walking commercial for something. It's almost, some of it, that content is almost evolved the same as what we grew to dislike about outdoor TV as viewers. It all sounds the same. It's pretty bland. And to me, podcasts are worthwhile if it's somebody who has a story to tell, somebody who will listen to others when they're having a discussion, and someone who does their background research and brings something to the table. But if I was going to do a podcast and talk about roller skating, I've never roller skated in my life. People would quickly sort out that, you know what, Randy's full of crap.
Yeah.
But you and I want to talk muskrat trapping, man. I hardly slept last night knowing we were going to do a podcast about muskrat trapping today, and or any trapping. So I think there's a ton of it out there, but I tell my crew, I call it static, and I don't mean that it's not valuable, because everyone's going to find their audience of some place in some way, but I tell my crew, we have to sound like music among all the static, because people have tons and tons of options of what they want to listen to. So how do we make our content sound like music to them? So
that's very good point.
Yeah. I mean, back us old folks, right, who used to roll the dial across the AM FM thing, right, in our truck. We used to hear it, and then all of a sudden the AM station had come on, and it'd be Garth Dolly from 24 Hours or something, you know, and all of a sudden it'd be some country music station out of wherever, and it's like, we remember those days. The kids today don't, or people today, they're like, what do you mean? But that's where my analogy comes from, is I don't want to be the static in between everything. I want to be the music. And I accept that, you know, there are some people who just don't want to listen to what Randy Newberg has to say, and that's great. Let me get you, you know, go find some people you do want to listen to. But if you kind of grew up in the backwoods like I did, up on the Minnesota-Ontario border, hunting, fishing, and trapping as your, I don't want to say livelihood, because a 7-year-old is not responsible for the livelihood, but it was a pretty meager existence, and a lot of this stuff was my currency. I was the wealthiest high schooler I knew in 1980. I was trapping fisher and beaver and you name it, red fox. I was getting $40 for a red fox back in those days, $25 for a good buck mink.
Wow.
And that was when money was worth something.
Oh, yeah.
Oh man, those were the good old days. I know it sounds like Grandpa talking about, right, uphill both ways when I say that, but it was really how I learned to get some spending money. Everybody was a logger, so in the summer we'd go out in the woods and log, and in the winter when the swamps froze, a lot of people would go and log. But I could make more money trapping than I could logging, because my dad was such a tight ass, he'd pay you like $3 a day or something. And I'm like, you know, I can't catch that much trapping weasels. And so that's where trapping really became the place where I spent most of my time out in the woods, which then converted over to how much time I spent hunting. And yeah, in the summertime when you're fishing, you can't really trap. But
nope.
It was my lifestyle. It was my identity. And I make no apologies for it. And I understand that some people aren't going to want to hear the tale of the world through the lens that a person like Randy Newberg has. That's fine. Okay. Go listen to something else. But for those of you who want to know, yeah, I was dropped on my head a few times as a child.
I was thrown on my head a few times.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I was a typical teenager and listened to nobody. So
yeah. And the other thing is, I was blessed, Rich, to come from a family of really colorful storytellers. And I had some grandmothers who were characters. And they would say stuff that if your grandmother said this today in a public setting, everyone would grasp their throat and hold their breath like she said that.
Oh, I
My
know.
grandma Harriet, she had, I mean, she'd look at someone and say, you know what? You've mistaken me for someone who gives a shit about your hurt feelings. And she'd just keep right on saying what she had on her mind. And so I'm not quite as blunt as Grandma Harriet was, but her point was, I can't concern myself with the fact that you're sensitive about this.
No.
And
When did somebody's hurt feelings become the overruling concern in the world? Like, I mean, notice though, while the virus is going on, that none of that, we're not worried about carbon dioxide. We're not worried about pipelines. We're not worried about inequality or about how many genders there are,
Yeah.
It's funny.
Yep.
My one boy, and his wife both work in a hospital, and I said, the joke came up about how only men and women were getting the virus, and the other 57 genders weren't. And I said to him, I said, "So what is that?" And he says, "Dad," he says, "there are only 2 genders when it comes to medical treatment."
Well, I use a lot of these old sayings that my grandmothers had, and I guess they do a couple things. One, back in the day, they weren't as concerned about everybody's feelings. They didn't go out of their way to piss people off, but there was an honesty to how they talked and what they said. So I try to make sure I stay in touch with that. And it also gives people a little bit of a background of, oh, that's why this guy is as weird as he is. No wonder, man. It just, when you grow up in a town of 500 people that's out in the middle of nowhere, and everybody is either a logger, a truck driver, or works at the mill, it's a different life. Okay, it's not like
you just have no idea how different you are from people who live in cities, do you? Like
you don't until you go to college in one of those big cities.
I can remember, because I came out of the north when I was just about 18 years old, and so I was going to trade school I was working towards getting my journeyman certificate as a carpenter. And it was my first time away from the north. So I'm 18. It was the first time I ever ate beef. We were raised on moose meat, deer, and elk. I mean, that's just the way it was, right? Let me tell you, the stuff that you would normally talk about with your buddies around the campfire or while you were eating bear or whatever did not go over big in those situations. It may come as a surprise. I was not popular with women back then.
I've traveled that same road, Rich.
Well, here's an example. I'd finally worked my way into getting a date with somebody, and I go to pick her up, and just as we're going to go leave, her mom comes in, and big cities always have feral rabbits everywhere. This feral rabbit runs out, and her mother runs over it, the back end of it. It's crippled and it's laying there screaming, and I walk over and I pick it up, and they're all just horrified and everything. And I pick it up and I wring its neck, and then of course you wring its neck, pull its head off, and I toss it over into the flower patch, right? And well, that was it. I never got on the date. I'm sure I was on a most wanted poster after that, but that was just a normal reaction for what was going on. That was life that was happening right there, and that was my job in it,
Yeah. Those kind of things you give when you grew up in that I'll call borderline subsistence lifestyle.
Yep.
Those kind of things. That's just, you know what? I've had to polish off X number of deer that have been hit by a car, or I've grabbed 3 grouse, wrung their necks, and brought them home and ate them. I don't even think anything about it, and everyone else is like, "Oh, we buy that stuff at the grocery store, man."
Oh, no. You even talk about how many meals you've had of roadkill. You know what I mean? Like people joke about it, about being rednecks now, but we weren't even rednecks. I mean, if people, somebody hit deer in front of you, and I mean it's still flopping in the ditch, so you go finish it off. Well, then you'd gut it out, you'd pack it up, and some of it would be too bruised to eat. You know, there'd be too much of blood clot throughout it. But there was a lot of it got hit the supper table. You know, and then people just, you know, to talk about it today, and people are just shocked, like, you know, like we were cavemen. No, this was the 1970s.
Yeah. So I try to make sure people get a little bit of that reality of where I come from and what my life's experiences have been that form my view of the world. And even adding more color to that, my mom has 6 brothers. So they have a big family. And I'm only 16 years younger than my mom, so it's quite obvious I wasn't here by design.
Yeah.
By the time I was about 14 and I did the math, I'm like, hey, Mom, I'm pretty sure I wasn't planned, you know, but I appreciate you keeping me around. So her brothers, she's on the older end of the family tree, and her brothers are my age, some of them. We were college roommates and stuff. And so I include some of her brothers in our content. And the older brothers are just these salty, don't give a damn, grew up logging, you know, went over to Vietnam, came back, blah, blah, blah. And they are some of the most colorful people you've ever met. And people just on our YouTube channel, when are you going to have Uncle Larry on again? When are you going to have Uncle Mike on again? And we got to bleep them so much. Oh. Larry owns the traveling profanity trophy. We just on our YouTube channel, we put up a video. We're in Wyoming last fall. There's 12 elk, one really nice elk, like 330-inch type elk, and then a bunch of other ones. Well, he's had chemo for 12 years, so now he's getting glaucoma from all the chemo treatment. He peeks over the rock, and I told him which one it is. Well, his peripheral vision's so bad, he doesn't see the big one. Oh. He just, boom, and he just drops this other small one. And when I told him you shot the wrong one, it is a streak of bleep, 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 bleep. So we out on our YouTube channel, we took all of Larry's cussing, not all, a 3-minute kind of roll of his cussing. And it's so funny. Everybody is just laughing. The number of views and shares is crazy. But I do that because I want people to know that this is a little bit of the salty world I come from. So if occasionally something slips out of my mouth, I apologize. My wife's family doesn't cuss, so I try not to for a lot of reasons. It just slips.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I mean, I'm raised in the north and around the same kind of people you were. I ran construction crews for years. I have a mouth that could make the devil blush, and then then you put me on TV.
Yeah.
My wife says, you know, you're she says sometimes I think you're borderline psychopathic or something, because she says you can flip that switch and never screw up, you know. But I was being interviewed one morning by a fellow on, it was a very big CJAC or something like that in Calgary, very popular radio station. So we were doing the Sportsman Show, and so we're down there being interviewed. And it was really funny. TJ, tell you the story, because, you know, we got to go down to this radio station. We're sitting outside to, you know, do our talk, and it's very early in the morning. And some guy walks out, and he looks like he turns out he was Samoan, but that's what he looks like. He's got the shirt on and everything, very, very big man. And he's maybe 22, 23 years old. And he's got the Samoan beard and all that. And, you know, this is February in Calgary. Like, you couldn't be more out of place if you tried, right? And he's leaving the room that we're supposed to go into to do the interview. And he turns around with the door open. He says, "Hey, the 2 old dudes from the Sportsman Show are here to talk to you." And this is like 15 years ago, right? So, yeah, I crushed TJ pretty hard. I didn't have any worries with him, but it crushed him pretty hard. He was one of the old dudes. I got even by talking about having a built-in vacuum on the houseboat to one of the ladies that was interviewing us, which got us in a whole bunch of trouble. But that's another story. But Jerry, the guy who was doing the interviewing, and he's this online guy, and he can talk 1,000 words a minute. Well, when he's off, when that light is off, every word is F. And I mean, and
Really?
he used it as a noun, a verb, an adverb, an adjective, everything, like everything. And so I'm sitting there and I'm going, don't say F, don't say it, don't say. This is what's going on in my head, right? And he'd flip the switch and he'd go on and on, and I'm like half a step off on this whole conversation because I'm worried about what I'm going to say when I open my mouth, you know. This guy he had a firewall inside his brain that when the light was on, this was one side that worked, and when the light was off, to the other side worked. It was just most distracting thing ever.
I can relate to that. I think my switch has been developed over 31 years of marriage to a woman whose family does not cuss.
Oh,
And so I come from this world where, kind of like the guy you were talking about, my mom's family, oh my goodness, it's an art form. And so I hang out with them and I kind of revert back to those. And then I come home and I got to turn the switch off. And then when my crew and I are out in the hills, I've got a couple camera guys where it's like, did you take cussing as one of your college minors or what? You light it up, man. And then I fall into that trip a little bit. And then when I see the red light on the camera, it's like, uh-oh, none of that, Randy.
yeah.
So I guess how we got to that point is that my feeling that if you're going to be a worthwhile person that tells stories, and whether it's story through video or print or podcast, I think you kind of got to be a little bit of who you are, and don't worry about someone doesn't like who you are. I don't.
That was the one thing that we learned. And for years, like, I mean, we were involved in Outdoor Quest, and TJ's still running Outdoor Quest, but we were involved in it for 18 years, 19 years, something like that. 18 years before we gave it to him and went forward with Trapping Inc. And there was, different formats that came up over all that time, right? Where the talking head in the studio with the, on the black screen and telling a story and the high productions and everything shot off of a tripod and that. But that wasn't us. And since we got into the trapping show, and one of the things that TJ always was adamant, like he was very old school. He was into TV before I was, and so he was very old school. He worked actually produced a fishing show for a major network in Canada. So he says, everybody knows the cameraman is there, but you never talk to them. The cameraman never talks back to you. And to me, that was always wrong. I mean, if you weren't talking to the cameraman, I mean, who were you talking to? Really, to me, it was kind of phony. It was like the days of the hunting shows where, the cameraman was between the hunter and the animal. You'd watch him stalking forward and you'd see him aiming and all that. It's like, really? Come on, you guys, you all hunt. You know what's going on here. This is all reenacted, right? This is all BS. And so once we started, Trapping Inc. and it took off because right away it was all mine. It was all my format. I didn't care what anybody thought. I kind of started it to get in a fight, and it was just us. So I had the best gig in the world, other than I had to watch my swearing. You're getting us pretty raw and unfiltered,
Well, I don't know how else to do it or how to be anyone other than I am, and I don't have all the answers to the world, but I do know that I try to smile. I try to have a good time. Times like this that we're going through, I hope that people think about what can get my mind off things. What take me somewhere where my daily life doesn't take me. I purposefully try to have our content designed to do that, and I laugh. my great grandmother, when my parents got divorced when I was 11 and I was kind of going through a funk, she would say, Randy, smile. You got a lot to smile about. And so smiling and laughing kind of became a little bit of my way of dealing with things.
Yeah.
And it's what I brought with me as an adult of, you know what, when all else fails, smile, laugh, crack a joke, do something, because it can always be worse. And, you know, that's just the way I do it. So, I understand some other people, you know, every day's, you know, walking out to the mailbox to get the newspaper is a life or death kind of, that's the gravity they put to everything they do in their life. And that's fine. But I'm not your guy. So
No, you know, and it's really strange because there's a couple things there. One, my wife always says, and Sandy is a wise woman, her only disability in life is being married to me, but she always says that you can't control what's coming at you. You can't control the world. You can't control what's going to happen. She says the only thing you can control is how you react to it. And that's like, no, you're right. You're so wise. See, it's a good thing I got her drunk, got her married. But, you know, the other thing that I've noticed, I had, God's my witness, I never knew how much I laughed. I never knew how much I laughed. I never did.
You laugh more than anybody I know, Rick.
I know, and it wasn't until I started, you know, I started editing myself, and especially when we got into trapping, because I'm having so goddamn much fun. You know, I mean, it's just it's such a relaxing time. I mean, even though it's work while you're there, you can't believe the stress that, well, you would, you know, the stress that bleeds off you. You're there, you're enjoying life. But I had no idea how much I laughed. If I would have been editing somebody else, I'd have thought the guy was simple. You know what I mean? Obviously, I know I'm not, but you know.
Well, I appreciate it. I suspect most of your listeners and viewers appreciate it, would be my guess.
Well, it's funny because I will be Costco or wherever, and Sandy and I'll be there, and I'll laugh. And you'll watch people their heads whip around and look at you, and then they come up and, hey, I know you. And until I laughed, they didn't know who I was. I guess it's better than being known for the other way. My wife was dealing with some clients the other day, and she's new in this role, so she's being introduced to everybody and as part of her training and all. And when her boss introduced her and said, well, you know, they mentioned the TV show, and the guy looked at her. She says, I know you. You're with the bald guy. As soon as I struggle to describe you, I know that the word bald's coming out.
In the summertime, do you ever get a chance to do much fishing anymore like you did before, Rich?
We have a little local lake that we go walleye fishing on. I don't have much of a boat anymore. I dearly love, do you know what? This is true. There's not a month goes by that I don't dream about walleye tournament fishing. You know, really? I will be back out. I'll be on a tournament somewhere. I don't do well. I mean, I never did, you know, but so it's pretty true to life dreaming, but I'm back out walleye fishing. That was a very major signpost in my life for whatever reason. I really enjoyed it. I'll give a shout out to, have you ever watched the on YouTube called 39 Hours?
No.
Do it. It is the most interesting fishing ever. And what it is they have different teams, and one's in Saskatchewan, one's in Manitoba, one's in Ontario, one's in Michigan, I believe. And they have 39 hours, and they go out, and whoever can catch the biggest fish of each species. Okay. And they can knock one another off. So it's a very different kind of tournament. It is the most fascinating you'll ever watch. And it is the most exciting, you know, and they've had 3 years of it now, or 2 years of it. Anyway, when it comes to watching YouTube and watching fishing, like, I mean, I love fishing. Watching it is tough. This is really interesting. It's really cool. But do you get to fish much?
I have to, as a function of my marriage.
Oh,
Kim, my wife, if we don't fish walleyes for a significant portion of the summer, she's like, well, I guess you just aren't going to hunt that much this fall. Like, whoa. So, oh
Really?
yeah. Oh,
That's
you should see
awesome.
her boat. The other day, I come home and there's a bunch of fishing rods in one of those big shipping tubes leaned against the outside of the house. I'm like, what the hell? I didn't order anything. Well, we have this Cabela's card that we purposefully put a bunch of stuff on there and pay it off every month so that we get all these free points. Well, she's out buying like fishing rod number 86 and 87. She got more fishing reels. She just went and got the new Humminbird color. What it looks like a TV screen. I'm still trying to figure out how to run most of it. But
They are fascinating. The new.
boat. Yeah, I mean, it just guys come over to my shop and they're like, "Oh, Randy, great boat, man." I'm like, "Not mine. It's my wife's. Her name's on the title." I mean, it's like, all right. I just back up the truck and she says, "Well, we're going to Fort Peck or we're going wherever," and I smile the whole way.
That's awesome. That is. it's like my wife saying, "Well, let's go to Africa for another month. I want to go hunting." You know, I love that. So
yeah,
is Fort.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
She purposefully makes sure that we have someone who does the lawn in the summer because she doesn't want lawn care and BS like that disrupting our fishing trips. So
is Fort Peck the major destination still?
Yeah, it is for us. It's, you know how it is. You kind of get in a groove. You get a little lazy about, okay, it's June. I know I should go to this part of the lake. It's August. I should go to this part of the lake. Or they're going to be here or there. Okay, the water level is this way.
Oh,
all right,
wow.
that means we're out, whatever. So after having fished it for 20 years, I'm just too lazy to want to go relearn something else.
How's it fishing? How's it fishing now?
Really, really good. You know, we had some really high water flows in 2010, 11, and then again in 2016, 17, and then again last year. So, and you know how those reservoirs are. You get those fluctuations of water, and when you get that flooding back there and all that brush and sage and stuff, it just creates a boom of bait fish that's unbelievable. And it's actually tough fishing for the first year or two after that because there's so much bait around, but the fish numbers just respond tremendously. So right now, it's crazy. You go to Fort Peck or any of the reservoirs up in that part of the state, and the number of 8 to 15 pound northern pike, they annoy the living hell out of you.
Yeah.
When you're trying to catch walleyes. And I know some people say, "Oh, well, they're fun to catch." Well, they kind of are, other than my wife doesn't like them in the boat. Get that snot rocket slimy thing out of here. So I'm there trying to keep this 12-pound northern not in the boat, you know, trying to untangle a bunch of crankbaits that he rolled around in the net. And it's like, I hate these damn things. But,
I've fished 3 different tournaments on Fort Peck, and that's all the fishing I've done other than pre-fishing there. But each one of them was so remarkable in its own way. I had the very first one. I had one up the dry arm, and then we had a tornado go through the night before, and I spent 2 days trying to make it still go. Do you know the area way up the dry arm? Now, this is when there was a lot of water there. Up the dry arm, where there was a it's not really a sunken island, but it was a big 14-foot deep flat, and it had weeds on it, and it was almost the fish collection station was past it. Okay, you know what I'm talking about, right? Okay, that big
by McGuire and Dawson Creek by the time you get up there.
Okay, well, that big flat up there, I was there one night in pre-fish 2 days before the tournament started, and these fish are jumping, and a lot of them are smallmouth, right? There's some really nice smallmouth there. And I don't know why, but I threw on some cranks and I drug out across these weeds, and the weeds ended about 6 feet down, and all of a sudden I started pounding big walleye, and it was just the most stupid place for it to be, right? But you'd also have those big pike hit, and I caught one pike that I had. Your rods are out there. I had a guy with me, so we had 4 rods going, and the outside rod goes, the middle right behind goes, and the middle off to the left goes, and bring it in, and here's it's one pike, and he's got all three crankbaits in his mouth, right? he'd sheared the other two off that fast, and you know how quickly they can take care of fireline, right? But yeah. I was catching, I was pulling like a 9-pound average, you know, on the walleye above those weeds. And then that big storm comes through and it's all over. And I struggled up there for 2 days and did nothing. And then I ran to Snow Creek on the third day. And I came in, I think, with the second biggest weight or something, like 56 pounds, you know.
That's a long haul from Dam to Snow Creek?
Yep, from up to Snow Creek. Yep. Yeah, and we, what the heck? Oh, that was when they had the reward on for the biggest fish. And I think 10 pounds or whatever. And Captain Cook ended up breaking the biggest fish there, but I had a bigger one on, and my guy knocked it off of the net. He got into, had a heart attack or whatever, and he knocked it off. But we were really shallow. We were pulling right in through the sweet clover and that kind of stuff, right? You know, we were really, really shallow. But just the first pull through, like sat down and got all 4 rods out, and the first pull on this 150-yard stretch that we were fishing, and I had about 40 pounds in the live well. You know, the kind of day you dream about. But yeah, I love Fort Peck. Man, I'll come back and go fishing. I'll take your wife fishing. You can go hunting.
Well, there you go. Maybe she always tells me, you know, if ever you leave me, I think really what she means is if ever I leave you. She's like, I got a really cool walleye boat that is the envy of a lot of people. I'm like, yeah, I know. And it always brings me back to, I worked in the sawmill when I first met her, and we were dating, and this old guy, Don Bowman, he was the millwright in the sawmill. And he says, Randy, I've seen her and I've seen you. I've listened to you talk and I've listened to her talk. Just remember this, because we were getting married that weekend. He said, there's nothing that she couldn't replace by noon the next morning. He said, you bring nothing to the table that she couldn't replace by noon the next morning. I'm like, damn, Don.
He was your best man?
No, we eloped, but he knew we were eloping, and so I kind of put it in perspective for me. And now that she's got a big fancy walleye boat with all kinds of other stuff, I think I'm off the tubes. I better be careful.
I freely admit I'm Sandy's only blonde moment in life, and you know. The fact that she loves hunting and trapping and fishing and that kind of stuff, it isn't a day goes by that people don't ask if she has a sister. You know what I mean? You know, people talk about karma and but they always talk about it in the negative way, how it's going to come around and haunt you. I don't know what or who I was in the last life, but I was really good, and now I'm reaping the rewards in this life, right?
Yeah. Well, how long have you and Sandy been married, Rich?
Be 41 years this fall.
Holy cow, you guys are way out in front of us. We've only been married 31. And I told her, you know what, when I think it was like our 20th anniversary, I said, okay, honey, you need to understand that my money back guarantee was for 20 years. Once we cross this 20-year threshold, there's no money back guarantee. You're just stuck with me, okay? That's just how it is.
Yeah.
So,
in our house, we refer to it as the anchor rusted to the boat a long time ago.
Oh, gosh. Well, Rich, we haven't covered much trapping stuff. What the heck?
Well,
all we got into was a little bit of muskrat trapping. How was the trap line last winter?
It was really good. It was really good. The martin numbers are up. You got to understand, when we have our trap lines here, there's 2 different kinds of trap lines here. There's a registered trap line, which you purchase, and that gives you exclusive area or exclusive rights to a certain area of public land. Okay, so I'm the only one that can trap there. I have no other rights other than I can trap there and I can have my cabins there, right?
Yeah.
But I have 144 square miles. I've got 4 townships that I have exclusive rights to. And then we have what's called residential trapping licenses, which means on private land. So any of the private land, then you get a residential license for. And the vast majority of muskrats and coyotes come off of residential land. Just because coyotes live in the farmland and muskrats live in all those ponds. It's a tough life in the big bush for coyotes and because of wolves, and for muskrats because of like things like mink and otter. It's it makes it so tough for them, right? So when you have a registered trap line, we have some quota animals that you have, which means that there's a certain amount, a maximum amount you can catch of each one of them, and what that means when, for instance, on my fisher, they say that I'm allowed 18 fish a season, but that is from, trapping all of my 144 square miles and trapping it for the full season. I should come up with 18. Most people don't understand that. They think when they go out trapping and they say, oh, just wasn't as good this year. You only caught 7 marten, and then you start talking with them, and you find out they had 20 boxes out, and they put them out on Friday when they go to the trap line, and they pick them up on Sunday when they go home. And I'm thinking, damn, you've got a lot of marten, and they don't realize it, right? They don't realize that I'll have at any one time I have about 140 baited marten traps out there. And they stay out there from the 1st of November to the end of January, which is when my season ends. And I cover that whole 144 square miles. I trap hard. Okay. That's just me. That's as ingrained in me as you don't do anything halfway. Right. And so when I look at this stuff and people talk about, well, the trappers can overtrap and all that. And I could think, humans have been around for forever. Humans have been part of the balance of nature for forever. And I think it's very egotistical to say that we make a big difference. It was one thing when we were using punt guns for table, harvesting for ducks for commercial sale and that was those kind of situations you can make a difference. But when you take a look at what I'm doing there, I have, if you look at that 144 square miles, and if I have a trap every half mile square, you know what I mean? That's a huge amount of area that is not being touched. And I mean, it happens all the time where you have tracks that come within 50 feet of a set, or even closer, but because of the wind or whatever, they go by, So when I take a look at that and I trap hard, I do not waste any time. I'm utilizing all of the land and all of the time in that. And the harder I trap, the more my marten numbers go up. And it's funny what happens to your populations. Like my lynx, when I took over this trap line 6-7 years ago now, all my lynx, every lynx I caught was big. Like it was, and a lot of people have no idea how big a lynx can be. They look a lot more than what they are. A giant lynx weighs 30 pounds. So anything that's, for a male, that's 25 pounds to 30 pounds, that's a very large. So you're getting, double XL lynx, right? And all of my lynx were big and old. Okay. And that's really a strange place to be, because you don't have a balanced population at that point. With carnivores, with predators, they eat the young of the year. They eat everything for various reasons. I mean, whether it's to bring her back into heat so they can breed, or just because that's the food that's there. So as your trapping goes on, now my numbers of lynx have gone up, but now I'm catching kittens, I'm catching young, I'm catching medium size and big ones, and it's the same thing now with the marten. My marten were all in one little corner of that trap line. Of that 144 square miles, I could take 30 marten out of about 3 square miles. And it was just because that there was all these other predators that were there that were eating them. I mean, everything eats a marten. I mean, I've had hawks and owls eat them.
Right up there with rabbits and everything else.
And it all goes by It all goes
Back
by
on the
size, right?
Yeah.
The smaller you are, the more likely you are to be ate. It don't matter how bad you taste or anything else, you know. But I've been really, because there's been so much of this, you know, we're damaging the wildlife, that kind of stuff. So I pay a lot of attention to it. And being in the outdoors and the outdoor media and that kind of stuff, we get a lot of questions. So I have purposely gone very hard at all of this. I've tried to manage everything, and to me, manage has just been trap as hard as I can and see what happens. My market numbers are going up. My age structures throughout my populations is starting to spread out. All of a sudden, I'm getting animals that are moving all around the trap line, where they used to be all down in one little corner. Now I have them all over the trap line. So they're spreading out their area. Here's the other side. It would be egotistical to say that what I'm doing has any effect in that, right? So am I just there as an observer of what happens to nature all the time? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's confusing to think of it that way, but yeah, long story short, that was a pretty good year.
Good. Well, whenever I have a time where I'm just wanting to get away from the world, I'm thinking someday I just need to call Rich and ask if he needs someone to come up there and split firewood for the cabin or something and help him. You probably wouldn't want to trust me with the knife skinning your valuable furs, but I could, maybe do something. I don't know what it would be. I'm of just about no value according to my wife and my employees. So I dream about what you do, and I just a kid growing up trapping and how much I enjoy trapping. For someone who gets to do it as much as you are, I'll just tell you I'm jealous. Okay, I'll come. What is one of the commandments? Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor. Well, guess what?
Yeah,
I envy thy friend Rich, because he is out there doing what
you need to come. You need to come up. Like, I don't know what your schedule like, but like early December or late November are really, really good times.
Yeah.
Just because, and early December, because then that's when Lynx and Otter also open and we get going. All the weasels and that open the 1st of November, but yeah, early December is a great time. You know what it would be like? It would be, because here's the cool part. I would like to see it through your eyes, because there is we get so many complaints from people. You show it, you do it too quick. You make it look too easy. What about this? What about that? And I don't never think of that stuff, because most of that stuff is muscle memory. It's like, I had a guy.
Yep.
We did Jeff Varvel from Alaska. We did a podcast with him recently, and he says, you inspired me to get back into trapping. He says, and I got some of these body grip things, these Connie bears, he calls them, and he says that's like a Japanese finger puzzle. He says, I didn't know how to set it. You need to show how to set it. And I'm like, you don't even think about what you're doing. You're not even looking at what you're doing. And I have lots of people that will send me an email and say, I watched the show here, and when you set that back up after taking that fisher out, you did not take the safeties off that trap. And I was like, I guarantee I did, because I've never since I was 12 forgot to take them off. But you don't even think about it. It's muscle memory and that. But I would really like somebody like you, especially with your background now with TV and that, to be there to look and see what it is we're missing to show. That would be really cool, man. You want to do that?
I'd love to do that. And I guess an example or a parallel to that is, I have on my crew a couple of my camera guides who don't hunt or didn't hunt. They're getting into it now. But back to your point of, you just take for granted this muscle memory of, well, everybody knows that, or everybody does that.
Yep.
They do such a great job of slowing me down and saying, Randy, not everybody knows why you are approaching it from this direction, why you're not just barging right in there when that elk is bedded, tell the audience why you're doing what, why are we doing it this way?
That's
everybody
exactly,
knows to do it that way.
Yep. That's exactly what I need. And
Well,
you have situations where stuff happens. You talked about being stuck and that kind of stuff. Well, I never even think about filming any of that, because that's just part of the gig. And actually, in a way, it's kind of embarrassing that you managed to get stuck. So you want to clean it up and get on with the day, because you've have a kind of a script running on your head, and the script is all happy times, right?
Yeah.
But
And so for me, I'm very thankful to have some crew members who will just remind me, Randy, I've only been doing this 3 years. You've been doing it 40. Okay, slow down. Tell me so I can film and get the message for the audience. What's going through your mind? Because when you're trapping, Rich, think about all of the stuff when you're just walking out to a set or getting ready to make a set. How many things you've processed in the last 5 minutes that the audience would have never dreamed how much information you've processed to decide, I'm going to make this kind of set at this location with this trap for this species.
yeah.
Based on how much snow is there, what the temperatures are going to be, or, the list of things you're processing is so, I mean, we'd spend 2 hours just talking about half of it. And your audience is intrigued by what you do because they're trying to figure out, how is Rich coming up with this end decision when he started here? What got him to there? And you're just oblivious to it because you're like, well, I know the wind's going to come out of the northwest, and I know that the coyote is going to come in this direction if the wind's normally out of the northwest, and I know that he's going to follow this path because the snow isn't as deep there, and blah, blah. You're thinking about all that, but your audience has no idea that all that's going through your head. And you're not standing there thinking about each of those items for 5 minutes.
No,
you're thinking about it 2 seconds.
Absolutely. And the worst part is you're not thinking about it. You just know it.
Yeah.
Because if I was thinking about it, God knows I'd open my mouth and say something, right? If I ever slow down enough to actually be thinking about something, that's when I start talking. And I say to Sandy, that's always the dangerous part because I never know what's going to fall out when I open my mouth. But you're right. But that's the kind of thing that I've said to Sandy that we need, because she says to me, somebody sends us an email and says, you need to show how to set a trap. And she says, well, they're right. And I says, well, what else do we need to show? And that's the whole problem, is that we do it so intuitively. And yeah, I need somebody who has a different view and they ask to wonder why. That's probably the neat part about going someplace where it's totally foreign. Like, do you ever, when you go someplace that you've never hunted before, like when we go to Africa and how things are so different there, I like to think about, I tell them all the time, I got to see this through your eyes. And that's what you're looking for is the ability to see it through their eyes. And sometimes when you're spotting sheep, especially, right? Sheep or coos deer, I understand, are very, very hard to see as well. But you got to get a balance in there. You got to see, what does the average bighorn sheep look like in amongst this kind of a structure? And that, am I looking at too small of things? Am I looking at too big things? You need to get that proportion going on, right? And that's probably one of the biggest weaknesses. That's where you have an advantage by having some people around. Like I say, we have a hard time getting people to come out regularly.
If I came out, I would offer to run a camera, but you wouldn't want me to. Trust me. I've had that job a time or two, and my crew, they pretty much hand me a little handy cam or a GoPro that is set on auto and say, here, you can handle that. And I'm like, all right, I get it. You guys get paid.
I've trained cameramen like you. The first thing I ask is, which finger do you use for the zoom button? They show me and I break it. Then we don't have any problems.
Oh, boy, isn't that the truth? My crew says, Randy, you're way handier with a camera than you let on to be.
Yeah.
But that's my approach in life. I don't want to let on that like my wife, I don't want her to know that I can cut firewood or I can fix the plumbing or fix the dryer. Because guess what? That's what she's going to want me to do the next time the dryer breaks down and I want to go fishing.
Yeah, so never sit next to the door when you're in farming country, right?
Exactly. Don't ever let anyone know that you have a certain capability, because then you get kind of pigeonholed into being that dude. And I don't want to be that dude. So yeah. filming, I can do it, but I'd prefer not to. I'd rather skin all your critters or flesh them or whatever than to film you. Don't take that away, but I'm 55 years old. I want to do the fun things. I don't want to do this stuff that's work.
No, we end up doing a lot of stuff off of tripods. So when you were talking earlier about the tripods and that kind of stuff, just because you get in situations where, our schedules are very, very loose, and other people's aren't as loose. So, you end up being in many times where you do not have a cameraman available, or they just don't want to go out in that weather. And some people, they're just as excited to go every day that you are. And other people, it's like the second or third time, it's like, okay, I've had enough of this, it's a funny thing that you need somebody who is so technical and have such an ability with that camera and with the audio and that kind of stuff. And yet they have very little interest in what they're filming. They would be just as interested in that camera and the levels and the audios and that filming paint drying as they are filming you hunting elk,
Well, I'm glad you had a good trapping season. When you have I'll call it your own trapping territory, do you have to report your catch each year to the government agencies or anything, or is it just up to you to manage how that works?
Well, there's two things that go on. Our quota animals have to be tagged. So do you remember the days of the old metal tag? Or maybe you guys still use metal tags? I don't know.
We still have them in some species.
Okay, well, we use metal tags for these quota animals. So within 30 days of a season ending, for that animal, you have to take it into either a government office or to some of the trap supply stores will do it as well, and some fur buyers will do it, but they will register the animal and put a tag in it for you. And so each one of these 4 quota animals, the otter, fisher, lynx, and wolverine, have to be tagged. You have there's a special report that goes in for your quota animals, but then you also have to do a fur report every year too, and that covers everything. So you may be doing a report for your resident license, and you may be doing a report for your registered trapping area, right? But it's one of those things. I'm actually, you were talking with the governor. Well, I've been talking with the premier and the deputy premier, who happens to also be our minister in charge of fish and wildlife and that. And I'm trying to get rid of things like quota and things like the registration of stuff. One thing, they brought in quota probably 30 years ago in the 80s. And that's even longer, but they've never changed it. The number of quota that have been allowed has never changed for this trap line in all of that time. So either it's way too high or it has no bearing in any reality, right? And especially like with things like lynx, they follow the lynx population is 2 years behind the rabbit population, the snowshoe hare. And so and there's nothing, just like you must have been someplace where the snowshoe hare where they hit their big population, they just explode. There's nothing you can do to control that, is there?
Nope, there's nothing.
No,
it's all just cyclical.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen the same thing happen in South Africa, and that's the same thing that happens with like the impala. The impala breed over 28 days. Okay, they're constantly coming in cycles, and over 28 days, the breeding and the fighting and everything goes on. When it comes time to be born, every one of those mothers gives birth in a 24-hour period, even though they might have been bred 28 days apart. But that's nature's way of overwhelming the predators. Okay, they just literally can't eat them all, and it's the same thing with rabbits. So the rabbits just explode. We have, rabbits running everywhere, and then pretty soon you have sick rabbits everywhere, and then they're dead rabbits everywhere. But meanwhile, all the predators are following it, and they peak about 2 years behind. So some years, I'm allowed 22 lynx. I can have my 22 lynx in 3 checks. And other years I trap the whole year and I get 8. You know what I mean? But every year my 22 lynx has been my maximum number for forever, and it's never changed. So quota doesn't really have a lot of value. We have quota, like I say, on otter and fisher. Fisher was put in place the reasons for putting quota in was just crazy. Fisher was put in place. There was a study done in Pennsylvania. I don't know how much more different you could get than between Alberta and Pennsylvania. But they did some study and decided that they needed to put a quota in, and at the same time, somebody in Alberta read the study, and this was back in the 80s again, so they put quota in place. Well, now since then, Pennsylvania, the fishers are doing fantastic once again, and quota had nothing to do with it, and neither did trapping. It was one of those things. We've have you ever heard of Elk Island Park? Elk Island Park is a federal park just outside of Edmonton. It's to the east of Edmonton. But anyway, you guys just had a bunch of American bison repatriated last couple of years down there. Yep. Yeah, they came from Elk Island Park. Okay,
really?
Well, we bought them. This is back in the 1800s. It was like the Coda Wild West show or something. Anyway, they had the last herd of purebred American bison, and they went to sell them off, or the government was going to kill them. And we bought them, and they came here, and we had in this park. It's divided by Highway 16, which is a major highway in Alberta, and on one side is the American bison, and the other side is the wood buffalo bison from up north. And so they've kept them separate. They've kept the genetics pure, and that's where when I think it was it the Sioux that purchased them back, or we gave them back to the Sioux? Was it?
Yeah, I think they came to. It would be the Fort Peck reservation up there. Yeah.
Yes.
I think it was them.
Yeah, and we had the last purebred American bison left in the world, and we gave them back. That was a pretty cool thing. I was also part of the group of people that trapped wolves and sent them to live trapped them and sent them to Yellowstone. But we won't talk about that one. Hey,
how much do you get paid for that? Boy, if you get paid for that, man, you and I are gonna have to. You can be careful if I come up there and trap with you. You might conveniently fall through the ice.
I was a trapper and I was getting paid, bud. Come on.
All right, you got to do what he's got to do. I know. Huh.
But anyway, to get back to Elk Island Park, it's surrounded. It's all fenced in and everything, of course, big high fences and everything. But it is surrounded by farmland for hundreds of miles. I would imagine. There's nothing to the south, and there's long ways before you hit any bushland to the north. There used to be fisher there, and of course, it's all beaver ponds and creeks and deciduous forests, poplar, aspen forest, all that kind of stuff. So it's a place where they originally lived. It was a natural habitat for them. They took and imported a bunch of fisher from Saskatchewan and put them back in there to repatriate fisher into the Elk Island National Park. And then here a few years ago, they decided they would see, because there was lots of fisher around, they would see what happens. So they started trapping them and getting hair samples and all that to check the genome. And it turned out that 98% of the genome was native Albertan fisher. And so they don't know where the fisher came from, and they don't know what happened to the Saskatchewan genome. But it just goes to show how little we know about all this, right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting when you say you have a quota of 22 lengths. Is that the number?
Yep.
Your limit. It's not like you can stockpile lengths, right? So these rabbit cycles, I'm assuming snowshoe hare is their primary food source.
Yes.
So in these periods when the rabbits come up on their great big cycles, you could probably be taking 30 lengths or 40 lengths, whatever the number may be.
Yep.
And you aren't going to affect the lynx population.
Not at all.
It's really by the fact that the rabbits are going to come off their cycle and they're going to go down in the next 2 to 3 years, and the lynx are going to follow behind that. So having that cap or that quota that you're talking about, it really doesn't serve anything from a management and biological standpoint, but it does keep you from taking that surplus that is going to disappear when the rabbits disappear or the hares disappear. So why not harvest them?
Well, and Mother Nature's solution isn't nice. Cats are unbelievably cannibalistic. If you own a cat, if you have a cat for a pet and you ever start getting chest pains, throw the cat out the door before you take the 2 low-dose aspirin and call 911. Because if you don't get the cat out the door before you die, you're tomorrow's fancy feast. There's just no two ways about it. And that's no joke. I every year lose cats to other cats eating them. And you know that a cat ate them because they can only eat them when they're thawed. They don't have teeth that will allow them to eat when they're frozen. So sometimes if it's a really tough winter, I'll catch a cat, and all of a sudden, you'd be looking at it, it's like it looks like there's blood on its fur, and you take and turn it over, and there is blood on its fur. What it is then you go down, the next pen that you run into a mile away or whatever, and there'll be a half-ate cat there. Well, he'd been laying on the cat to try and thaw it so he could eat it some more.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Oh, cats are something else altogether. But when you take the reason that they put in the quota for lynx was during like 79 and 80, lynx went off the charts. You have had lynx that were going for $1,500-$1,600, and I had one that went for $1,300 was my best. And let me tell you, when you were a kid and you got a check for one cat for $1,300, you were a wealthy man. So they decided that, oh my God, everybody in the world was going to go after lynx because they're worth so much. So they put these quota in to stop it. And they also then, it used to be that you could, on a resident license, you could trap lynx. Well, then they made it so that only registered trappers could. And so they cut all this back. What it's turned out is that we have all this quota in Alberta. And every year we ship less than 10% of that quota. And you take like a situation like my son's trap line is much smaller. It's just over a township in size, but there's a mountain. It encompasses a mountain, and I think he's allowed 5 or 6 lynx on it for season, and that's like one check for him. And he's afraid to open any more than 8 or 9 pens because he will have his 5 in that one check. Lynx are covering a much bigger area than that. So I mean. Later that day, there's that many lynx back there again. But this is all stuff that's being done by people who have no connection to trapping, have no connection to the animals, no connection to what's going on. And the price of lynx is nowhere near that anymore. We're not, you're lucky. I mean, if you're averaging $150 for lynx, you're getting good money at that point, right? Lots of them are going for half that.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, our western cats here, the Intermountain, Great Basin, Rocky Mountain cats, are still holding their value quite well. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the whole world economy probably having a hiccup here, how that is going to hold off. But when I was in college, I snared bobcats on my way home. I took the back roads home from the university to where I lived in this apartment, and I'd snare bobcats. And my wife now, who was my girlfriend at the time, she wasn't quite sure what to make of that. He's got bobcats hanging from the shower head, carcasses, like with no hide on them. He's in there skinning them in his apartment. Well, cleaned up easy. All I had to do was turn the shower on and wash all the blood down the drain. But then when we went to the fur auction, and I averaged, which at the time in 1987, to average $300 or $400 a cat. She got that trapping nuts and bobcats was a pretty darn good idea after that.
I've never got a chance to trap bobcat because we're too far north for them, and I've never. Here's another silly thing: I've never trapped raccoon. We're way too far north for them as well, and I'd like to do both of them. That sounds so cool.
Yeah, well. You'd like trapping bobcats or snaring them. Coons, since they're only worth about, the last few that I sent to NAFA before they went wheels up, they didn't even sell them. And these were big jumbo coons. And man, they're a lot of work to flesh and get all that fat and gristle off a 25-pound big old boar coon. And then you send it up and you get $4. It's like, really?
Well,
so you're not missing anything with the whole coon thing. I get the novelty of it, but stick with link.
Yeah, I'd like my own. Get going on my own, right?
Yeah. So are you guys also on a quota for wolves?
No, no, not at all.
No.
No, you can
Okay.
catch them all. They say that they say we should have 12 to 1,600 wolves in Alberta, and that we've got probably over 8,000 right now.
I was gonna say 12 to 1,600. I'm gonna call BS on that number.
Oh yeah, no. That's what they say is the proper. I mean, when you take a look at the numbers, Randy. I mean, this could go on forever because I have a mind like a junk drawer and it's full of stuff. But you take a look at the numbers to support 4,000 wolves. Okay, your ungulates. You need 20,000 ungulates, so 20,000 deer, elk, moose, to produce enough food to feed 4,000
Right.
wolves, plus to keep their own population self-sustaining. Think about that. That's 20,000 of them are needed to feed those 4,000 before you have any that are hit by vehicles, shot by hunters, killed by bears. That's just to feed the wolves.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. So when you guys wanted wolves, then are you sure? You want it live? You want a dead one? Okay, we can get you dead. No, you want a live one.
Did I send you a picture of the wolf I shot last year?
No.
Oh, I hauled one in and shot it. Because when I grew up in northern Minnesota, wolves never left the landscape there. They've always been there. And so I used to catch them in my fox and coyote traps. And you'd go get the game warden, and he'd call the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service officer, and they'd release it if it was still alive. A lot of times what would happen, the drag would get hung up in the brush, and some grouse hunter would come by and boom.
Yeah.
And you'd walk up to it like, great, just what I need. A dead wolf with a bunch of bird shot in it, or who knows who shot it. I don't know. So I'd go get the game warden then and say, hey, I did not shoot that thing. So, because back then you couldn't trap them or shoot them or hunt them or anything like that. So I was always fascinated by them and used to howl to just get responses in December and January. I lived on the hill above the river, and I'd go down to the river and I'd just howl across the river at night. And maybe they were always there, but some nights my howling just sucked, and so they didn't respond. I think possibly what it could be is they just weren't there, and that's why they didn't respond. But every fourth or fifth time you'd get responses. So I'm out deer hunting. My wife says, you know what? It's your birthday. You should go without cameras. You haven't hunted without cameras for 12 years. I married you. I knew you're the brains in this operation. So I go out there. Right away in the morning, I see a wolf over on a piece of property I don't have access to hunt or permission to hunt. And I start howling, and the thing comes like, it's going to eat me. Boom. Well, in the lower 48, if you post a picture of you and a wolf on Instagram, expect a lot of love letters, as I call them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you notice any increase in love letters since people have time here with the being at home with the virus and all?
I don't, but while you and I were talking, I just got a big email notice here from YouTube saying, we have received a report that you have violated our community guidelines. We will notify you of the outcome. So
really,
I suspect people don't have anything better to do than to go to my YouTube channel and say, hey, this guy is violating your community guidelines, because I show them how to convert wild things into food.
That's amazing.
Oh, well. Yeah.
That is amazing.
People have better. So.
Okay.
As my grandma would say, get a number and stand in line, because I'm kind of busy to put up with your shit right now.
Oh, Randy, I have so enjoyed this. And you know what? If the world gets back to normal, maybe Sandy and I come to do some fishing with you guys this summer.
Oh, yeah. We'd love to do whatever. Or if ever we find our way coming to Grand Prairie, I'd love to catch up with you. And don't be surprised if I call you in December and say, hey, Rich, were you serious about that trap line thing?
I'm
dead
my wife
serious.
Just threw me out
nerves, and she told me to go somewhere for a week.
I am dead serious, and I'll mark it on the calendar. Like serious. Like you, I really would like your input. Like, I mean, that's important to me because, like I say, I miss out on so much that I just don't think about what I'm doing. Right.
Yeah, I think we're all that way. So.
Let everybody know where they can find all your stuff, Randy. You must have some.
I don't try to hide who I am, so pretty much everything I do is under Randy Newberg Hunter. And how that came about, you'll get a kick out of this, Rich. I have this CPA client. She could never get a hold of me in the fall in hunting season. So one time she comes to the CPA firm office, she grabs my business card and she crosses out the initials CPA and she wrote Hunter, and she left that card on my desk. I'm like, hell, I like that way better than accountant. So that became my business card going forward. So I'm like, all right, everything I do, Instagram, Randy Newberg Hunter, Facebook, Randy Newberg Hunter, YouTube, Randy Newberg Hunter. Amazon is Fresh Tracks with Randy Newberg. So podcasts, Hunt Talk Radio and Elk Talk Radio. So we're pretty easy to find.
Well, that is right
whether
on.
Good or bad. So.
I appreciate so much.
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
I really appreciate it, Rich. And you just need to know, tell Sandy that, I had Randy on the podcast and he talked a bunch of BS for 2 hours. He said that he's holding us responsible for the demise of his marriage as a result of us convincing him there's so much money and pleasure to be found in the outdoor media world.
Yeah.
I'm blaming it on you.
I'm like your grandma. Take a number and get in line.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm so thankful that you were kind enough to send me the invite and we were able to do that.
Oh, I appreciate you taking the time. This has been a wonderful time. We're going to do it again. I'm dead serious. You're going to have some fishing partners here this summer.
All right.
All right. Take care.
You take care, Rich.
And thank you, everybody, for listening.